My name's Zachary Snader, and I'm in collegiate operations for PlayVS, and I found my esports job through Hitmarker. So I am over at PlayVS, which is a company that builds infrastructure for amateur esports, right now focused on academic esports for high school and college. And my job presently involves basically everything on the college side. So we operate our product, which is a tournament platform that has a lot of other proprietary integrations built in based on the publishing relationships we have. And we also have our leagues. So I make sure that everything is tied up nice and neat from the collegiate side. So I work with all of the other teams that we have at PlayVS, product, marketing, creative, growth, data engineering, and our operations unit. And I make sure that we can operate a good match experience week over week. Ideally, the best in class match experience. So I'm doing everything from hanging out in Discord with our players to sharing news to making sure that we have all of our resources aligned internally, dealing with all sorts of logistics for like incentive delivery and communicating with partners, communicating with schools, trying to bring new schools on board, making sure our current schools are happy. That is just the start of the list. So it's a very deep role that has me wearing multiple hats on a daily basis. I've pretty much been around the industry since I was in my teens, late teens, like early 20s. I actually started out like professionally in the industry as a student. I was working as an independent game developer. And even before then, when I was a kid, I had worked on all sorts of like random little game maker projects. I don't know if it was Game Maker exactly like that software, but softwares of that type. So I'd always been working on games, creative projects, that kind of thing. I did 3D animation in high school, and we actually worked on a game project there. So I got exposed to the games industry pretty early, and I read Game Informer and like 1UP, and I watched X Play, and yeah, I've been involved with like the industry side of things for a very long time. So when I was a student, my first 2 years at university were just focused on general education, and then I realized, after working on some side projects, that I really wanted to focus my energy on developing games. So transferred to a school where I studied game design, and that's where I had my indie dev role. And I bounced around different projects, did some indie game design stuff at a studio called Retora. And then I also launched my own games conference with some friends out in Phoenix. And I also ran like a really small publishing / marketing label. Did all sorts of random stuff. And then I actually bounced around tech for a while, in between stints in the games industry and esports. But I transitioned from games to esports around 2014. So I've been bouncing from tech to esports since then. I signed up for Hitmarker a couple years back, and I might be misremembering, but most likely I saw Richard somewhere on LinkedIn and was like, oh wow, there's a job board specifically for esports. This is super cool. Having been on the other side of the industry for the first couple of years of my career, I was using job boards more focused on game development and not really esports. So when I saw Hitmarker, it was a breath of fresh air to see something dedicated specifically to the esports industry. Job hunting process in the games industry, whether it's esports or games, you have to be relentless and determined. When I was just coming out of school, so I had a degree in game design. I had started my own projects. I had a long job history, and I'd worked on some student projects as well. I thought all of that combined would make me prepared for being a part of the games industry, especially because I'd attended E3 at an early age and like really tried to put my name out there. But what I learned is that it's not always enough for those that are in hiring positions to see that you're doing all those things. You really need to figure out what sets you apart from everyone else and figure out how you can go above and beyond where you are even now. I realize that's a pretty big statement because it puts a lot of pressure on people, especially in tough economic climates or in very competitive industries. But when you can speak your own voice and when you can demonstrate examples of having done that successfully, then I think it will really set you on a fast track to finding the right role for you. So the process was very challenging because I did apply at so many places. I think having some quality control there as well will make that process easier. So I just like scattershot through my resume, my portfolio. I just sent it out to literally every studio that I could when I was first coming out of school, trying to go into the industry and work for like a AAA studio. And I just don't think that was the way to go. Trying to build relationships with people at companies that you really want to work with is a good way to go. And even stepping back further from that, understanding what companies you would want to work for or what you'd want to start yourself. Thinking about the why, the problems that you want to solve, and then working backwards from there. Because if you just apply for every company and your cover letter is templatized and you're only changing a few things, any hiring body or hiring manager is going to notice that. So reflect the care and quality that you want to get out of your role and put that into the application. The pros and cons of job hunting. Well, obviously a con kind of feeding from the process is that you're likely going to get told no many times, and that's just inherent to being in an especially competitive industry, in a creative industry where tons of other people want those roles and there's not many there. It's just a numbers game at the end of the day, and you won't always get what you are aspiring where you're aspiring to work. It's just not going to happen. And building that kind of protective thick skin early on is going to really take you a long way. Cons of job hunting, obviously being told no, not really having income coming in as well. That can be really tough, and depending on your socioeconomic background or your current living situation, whatever it might be, that can make things even harder. I would say don't be afraid to pick up some work if you have the capabilities and the opportunities to find contracts while you are job hunting. It'll just make things easier. Any runway you can give yourself, of course, is going to do that. But don't be like so overly proud that you wouldn't be willing to take on some side work while you're job hunting, even if that means working at a department store or a grocery store or whatever it might be. Again, that's kind of different in a time like this, but still, block out time for focusing on job hunting and just dedicate your time to that and nothing else. But make sure you're doing that every day. So I'd say those are the biggest cons of job hunting. Pros of job hunting: you get to learn a lot about the industry. See what kind of projects are being made by different studios, what different teams are doing. If you're looking at esports, what different orgs are working on. You can get an idea of what the future looks like for an organization based on the kind of roles that they're hiring for. So just getting that knowledge is always going to be beneficial. Like you can't lose out by having more of that knowledge as you go through this process. Other pros of job hunting: you get to meet other job hunters. It's a perfect opportunity to network with other people in the industry, whether they are around your skill level or working on a specific project of the same type, or if they're in a similar kind of role, or even just putting your name out there with industry professionals. That way you can continue to build up that network, even if you're not working in a role full time. yeah, that's one of the biggest pros of job hunting, is that because you're kind of in that middle state, you have a unique talking point, and you can really frame your story and your discussion around where you're at now and where you want to be and where you've come from. I think that also ties into all the lessons learned that I've had. But yeah, really the biggest one is just staying persistent, not giving up, and yeah, just keeping your head high and going at it every day. I've been in positions before where especially out of school, I was looking for my first role for, I don't even know, 6 months or so, maybe longer. I eventually just kind of like stopped and started doing my own thing because I needed money. And yeah, I actually put those things on hold as well because they weren't as successful as I wanted them to be. And, you know, I bounced around tech for a while so that I could just get some money coming in. And I'm really happy that I did, because it's worked out for me in the long run. So I don't regret the choices that I made there, even if they were incredibly hard for me at the time. Yeah, my aspirations for the future, man. I think they go beyond what I'm doing in games and esports right now. So I see this entire ecosystem as a way to connect people together. And, you know, it's almost a meme at this point that like games are the new social network and esports is the only sport and all of that. But truly, games are a way that people can connect with one another. And those experiences are inherently unique to what you can find in games. I would say that people who have been playing games for most of their lives already know that, or people who have been in creative spheres their whole lives would know that as well. You know, just being a bit of an outcast or finding a community that's very specific to you. Those are things that we as gamers, as nerds, as whatever you identify with, right? If you're in any of those areas, then you're going to have had those experiences. And I think if we extrapolate out what that kind of connectivity looks like in the next 10, 20, 50, 100, or even 1,000 years, I think there's a lot of systems that we can take from elsewhere in the world and layer into the way that we connect people through games. So what I really want to do is continue growing out the educational space through PlayVS. I love what we're doing on the college side. I love what we're doing on the high school side. And it's also really encouraging that there are other leagues, other organizations, other governing bodies that are putting more and more support into the space as well. And, you know, the rising tide lifts all ships. I'm sure we've all heard that a lot lately, but it is very true. And I think we're seeing the results of that with all the buy-in that we're getting from the organizations that we're trying to bolster and support. So as we do that, going back to what I was saying earlier, is these other systems that we can tie in. It's everything from creating unique job pipelines for students that get involved with the industry at a very early age, teaching them marketable skills that can be applied not just to games and esports, but to tech, to bioengineering, to science, to electrical engineering, whatever else they might want to get into. I think games can be a pipeline for us to really work around. Sorry. Yeah, so having that career pipeline, having that opportunity to share skills with people throughout that entire educational experience, I really want to focus on that. So it's kind of taking what I'm doing now and growing it to the point where maybe it's not self-sustaining, but it would allow me to focus on really tying all of those things together rather than building up any one component of the ecosystem. So that's ultimately what I'd like to do as my next step. I think it's going to take a very, very long time to get there, because even with the last decade of evolution in this industry, even the last 5 years, there's still so much growth that we have yet to experience in esports. And we are just at the tipping point right now. So as we continue to grow the space, I think those opportunities will open up. And honestly, now really is the perfect time to get into the industry if you aren't already. But I guess that's kind of always the saying, right? It's like the perfect time was yesterday, the best time is today, something like that. Yeah, so that's kind of what I'm looking towards for the future, and I've got some other crazy ideas that I want to tie into my esports career as well from outside of the space, but time will tell how those get built out. So yeah, I'm really excited about the future in this industry, though.